Hello. What are you doing here? Is it, oh, it's that time, isn't it? Okay. Hmm. It's busy playing my little giddle here, little Irish instrument I had off the last year as a sabbatical. And so this is my first class back in a while. I didn't realize time passed so fast. So this is for film criticism. It'll be an asynchronous class that we're having. We're not meeting in person, and also we're not even meeting at a specific time online itself. So it's sort of self-paced. The good thing about an asynchronous online class is you don't have to be here, obviously, so you can be across the globe doing whatever the heck you're doing. The problem is, obviously, that it puts a lot of the onus of the work on you, and you have to be really kind of disciplined and self-disciplined to do it. I'm not, quite honestly, a huge fan of online classes. I teach predominantly in person during the regular semester, but given the summer and people are traveling, it does seem like this is the best scenario for the majority of people. I sent you out an email a couple days ago and saying that we don't have any, you don't have to buy any books or anything for the class, but you do have to buy some films that you're going to have to watch for the class itself. You could either buy physical copies of them or streaming, though, as I mentioned in that email, The Harder They Fall is only available through streaming on Netflix. So, and these are the way they're going to be watched in class. The first one is The Hills Have Eyes, one of the most classic horror films ever done. This is the 1977 version. Do not watch the new one. You can see my copy comes from Blockbuster when it used to exist. They always had good sales when they went out of business. So that's where that one comes from. Second film, sort of underrated, Us by Jordan Peele. So that'll be the second one you watch. Third one will be The Harder They Fall, which I mentioned again will be on streaming on Netflix only, and then the final one will be Django Unchained here, right? Again, DVD or streaming. I'm old school, so I kind of like DVDs if I particularly like the film and I'm going to watch it multiple times itself. So it's just a good way with DVDs, you kind of disconnect from everything. You're not connected to other stuff digitally, right? So I kind of like that sense of separation. You can read the syllabus yourself. I'm not going to go over all of this part. I just want to emphasize a couple things. One, the main assignments in the class are going to be discussion board posts, which are 75% of your grade, and then a final paper, which is 25% of your grade. And you'll see the way in which each discussion board post is to help you work out ideas that eventually one of them, discussion board posts, will help be the foundation for your final paper. It's what teachers call scaffolding, where earlier assignments build up to later ones, so you don't feel like there's a pointlessness or just you're doing busy work, right, with this earlier stuff. The earlier stuff is you're working out ideas that will hopefully improve your thinking, analysis, writing of the final paper. You can kind of think of the discussion board posts as rough drafts, or even more like brainstorming certain ideas of the papers itself. I like it, kind of emphasizes writing as a process that builds up to this. So, your final thing will be a 3-page paper at the end of the semester that you will be submitting. Have your basic things. Don't plagiarize. Don't use AI. AI won't help in some ways with this class because, as you'll see, you're going to have to do in-depth scene analysis. And in some ways, it's just not equipped yet to do that type of thing where you look at a specific scene in a film and show how a concept applies within it. It's not good with the details. I've been playing around with ChatGPT myself just to see, what it can do. It's pretty fascinating, I might say. It kind of talks broadly about things, doesn't it? But it's not so great with specifics. The honor code, blah, 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 blah. Counseling and psychological services, if you need them, they're there. So the first 4 weeks of the semester are relatively similar to one another. In the last 2 weeks, you're going to be working on the paper itself. So in general, there'll be a reading that you'll have to do in the beginning of the week, a screening of a film, and then you'll do a discussion board post for at least for the first 4 weeks on a Thursday, and it'll be due by 11:59 p.m. So you'll see for the first week, you're going to watch The Hills Have Eyes. I really look forward to hear what you have to say. This is some of you probably know it. You're horror fans out there probably are very well aware of Hills Have Eyes. It's often considered one of Wes Craven's best films he's ever done. Before he did Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff. And you're going to be reading a Robin Woods essay, which is rather lengthy, 22 pages, and kind of like dense. It's a dense piece. So that's why I have, if you'll notice, not only in this week, right, but I'll have you reading it again in this week, where you'll apply a different concept to a film. So I kind of dig that you're going to like read it twice over and hopefully have come to a better understanding of it the second time around than perhaps you had the first. There's a lot in it, right? So in some ways, you're going to pick out just what you consider sort of the best concept within it. So, the first week you'll do Hills Have Eyes, read Wood's piece, right, about it, and you'll see there'll be a discussion board post here on Canvas. So first of all, just to state the obvious for Canvas, the syllabus can be found under syllabus, and you can click on it up here. You see my little cursor. The files, right, the readings will all be available here. You can kind of pop them up. So there's Robin Wood's piece. And I recommend that you download the piece just so you're not like stuck, to the dependency of the internet. If it comes in and out, just get it over with and print the thing up. Or download it. I'd say print it up even and write notes on it. So that would be a good practice, right? You print it up, write notes on it the first time you read it, for that first week, and then continue writing notes on it the second week and see what maybe you've learned, or maybe amend some of the notes you had on there that perhaps were wrong based on what you're learning after the first week itself. And then there'll be discussion board posts under discussions. I should say your setup's going to be a little bit different than mine because I'm obviously the instructor here and I get a little different look at it. But you'll see here, Hills Have Eyes, right? And here's the prompt. Right, it says read Robin Wood's essay, identify a core concept in the article that you believe applies to the film. First, explain how the concept works, right? So I'll be commenting on that. All the discussion board posts, I'll be responding individually to all of y'all of what's going well, what's not going well. And I'll be highlighting who's doing pretty good posts to give you models of what's happening. So I usually try to highlight 2 or 3 posts each week. So you guys can see, okay, like so-and-so is doing really well and so-and-so is doing well. I try to spread the goodness with that, right? Not selecting obviously the same people every time that do it. So first thing is, right, first explain how the concept works, and then next show how the concept applies to a scene in the film by conducting in-depth scene analysis. And I kind of continue here of what that means. It means you want to write as detailed as you can about how the scene operates in relationship to the concept you are discussing. How's lighting working, editing, sound, right? Camera movement, acting, costume, whatever. You don't talk about all that, but what are the most relevant elements of that scene that help illustrate the concept that you have? This is where you want to get really into the texture of the film, right? Of what it's specifically doing. And doing that. And you'll see, right? You just keep going to discussion board posts and they'll all be listed out for all the ones that you need to do, right? There's us following week, The Harder They Fall. After that, Django Unchained, so on and so forth. Right? So same thing. Next week, the week after, The Hills Have Eyes, you'll watch us reread Robin Wood, discussion board post. The Black Western will follow after that. That'll be The Harder They Fall. You're going to read this sort of like dated essay from the 80s of mythology in the Western film and see how it applies to actually this much more contemporary film. I kind of like doing that at times, picking these older essays and see what resonance they have with more, contemporary stuff. Where are they still relevant and where are they not? I don't want to act like all the essays are perfect either, right? We're there to extract the things that are relevant to it, but we shouldn't dismiss necessarily the things that they are not hip about anymore. And then finally, the fourth week, right, you'll watch Django Unchained. You're going to read Ed Guerrero's piece, which is interesting. It's not about the Western, but you'll see it's about the biracial buddy film. And so obviously most people know Django Unchained as, kind of neo-Western, new Western. But I would also argue it is, in the league of the biracial buddy film. So I think it'll be really interesting you reading what Guerrero says and then seeing how it applies to Django Unchained. You'll see this is the only week too. I have another reading from Tarantino, who has a new book out, which you film nerds probably know already, right? Called Cinema Speculation. It's actually a really interesting piece that I read over the summer, and there's a particular part within it where he talks about sort of the origins of Django Unchained before he knew it would be Django Unchained, but what put the seed in his head about it. So you'll find it again on the Canvas site under files, and it's a very small piece here. You're not going to be writing about it, right? You're going to be writing about the Guerrero piece for that week. But I still thought it would be really interesting. It's just really kind of contemporary with what's going on. It just literally came out 2022, this book, which I do recommend you reading. It's an interesting book. So you see here about 5 pages, and it's fairly big in terms of, it's not like a hard read here. You should all be reading, by the way. I mean, directors and other creative people's stuff, just to get a sense of what they're doing and how they're approaching things, as well as, looking at a lot of the DVD extras and listening. That's the one thing about DVDs, I'll say, that has the director's commentaries there that are really invaluable in some ways. I love directors and their screenwriters and just sort of behind the scenes people, and you always learn a ton with it. I usually just want to see the film itself, right? But then if I really like it, I'll start listening to that stuff and doing multiple. One of the greatest ones is actually Citizen Kane. There's multiple different people. Roger Ebert does one that's absolutely phenomenal on there, but there's like multiple actual commentaries on that film, which is really good, as you can imagine, because it's sort of a classic. Anyway, so that's the first 4 weeks. You're going to be watching a film, reading, doing a discussion board piece, and trying to elaborate upon a concept within that reading. And I will be giving feedback of how well you're understanding the concept, how well it's applying to the film, and hopefully through that, you're going to be learning, what you might want to write about and what you don't. So come the 5th week, now you're going to be working on your piece, the rough draft. So July 24th, again, this is going to be due 11:59 p.m. It's going to be a discussion board post. Maybe I'll pull it up here just to show you what it says. Right. Choosing your film and concept. Choose the film and concept you will apply to it. If you are picking a film not screened in class, explain why it would be a good example to use. And you have to pick films from 2022 or 2023 that might illustrate this concept itself. We want it to be really contemporary, nothing old. Explain the concept you will apply. All films picked on your own must be approved by the instructor, so make sure to check my reply for approval. I mean, normally people do okay, right, in terms of that, but nonetheless, you don't want to be something like way off base with that. So you'll say, I'm going to write about this. I think I'm going to write about this, and I'll give you a fast. This will be fast, right? Because you're not going to be writing a lot, really, about what you're going to be doing. This is just sort of like getting a temperature check. What do you plan on doing, and making sure everything's a-okay before you start engaging in that. And because we don't want you to start doing something that's not proper, right? So you'll do that, right? And you'll see relatively shortly after, 4 days later, after I give my feedback with you, you'll have a discussion board post, which will basically give me a sense of kind of a rough beginning of the thing that you're going to write. So you can see here, right? You're going to write an opening paragraph, which will probably be changed in the long run. We often write these opening paragraphs thinking where the paper is going to go, but often we rewrite that opening after we've written the paper, because the paper actually turns out maybe somewhat different than we imagined it originally be. That's no problem, right? You're just trying to get your ideas out right now. You're not beholden to what you've written here, right? This is sort of, again, for feedback and rough drafts. So you see, you'll write the opening paragraph, and then you'll write the first major body paragraph, and then you'll outline the remainder of the paper to be analyzed, right? So you have this opening paragraph, and then the first body, which will be the first idea, right, you're going to be writing about, or the first point, and then you're going to lay out for the rest. Okay, where is this going, right? You can just a brief outline, right? Next paragraph will be this. Next paragraph will be that, right? So on and so forth. Like I said, it'll be a 3-page paper itself. So however long that takes you. And then I will give feedback to you, right, about that, and say, okay, this sounds good. This sounds problematic. Maybe you want to develop it here. Maybe you want to stay away from that. Usually it's me kind of helping you whittle down. Sometimes you're overly ambitious and you want to write about too much. For a 3-page paper isn't that long. You know what I mean? So you really, I'll say this, and I say this all in my classes, you'd rather write about less and more in depth than a lot, but superficially, right? So one more time, you want to write about less, but more in depth than a lot of things, but you write about it superficially, right? And so the challenge with 3-page paper is it's so small that you really have to hone your skill set down to be like ultra focused on it. On one level, it's easier because it's a shorter paper. On another level, it's more difficult because it doesn't have a lot of wiggle room, right, in there to do it. So anyway, I'll give you feedback on that. And then finally, your paper will be due 11:59 on August 4th, which I believe is a Friday. Grades have to be in, I basically probably will try to submit them by Sunday because I think they have to be in by Monday morning itself. It doesn't give us much time itself. So you really got to get these things in at that time, or, we'll just kind of miss it there. In general, with the class too, since we're not meeting, I'll field questions via emails. If I see a bunch of you are asking the same question, then I'll just respond to everybody and let them know, because then that will be clearly a, question that most people have. In terms of email, just my policy is I try to get back to you within 24 hours of when you send that email during the week, Monday through Friday, right? I try to get back to you. So if you send it, say, 3 p.m. on Monday, I try to get to you no later than 3 p.m. on Tuesday. I usually try to check once in the morning and once in the afternoon, and that's sort of it. The weekend, however, is the weekend, so I don't check emails then. So if you're sending me an email 5 p.m. on Friday, you're not going to get a response until Monday, right, about that. So you should just be aware of that, of this weekend policy itself. You have to kind of segment out your time, right, with this stuff itself. I really look forward. I like this in terms of providing feedback, even though I'm not big on online stuff. You know, I do like the emphasis of process and me constantly giving you feedback on your writing and what's going on, and kind of just all working together on that. Like, good papers aren't written in, the last minute. Even though a lot of us are guilty of that, including myself when I was an undergrad, often procrastinating or just having a bunch of other obligations, and you don't get to the paper itself. So I feel like one of the things we can do as faculty is provide ways in which we force you sort of to take your time on the papers itself. So hence the discussion board posts and stuff. And I always look forward to, hearing what you have to say about the topics. I learned stuff from you as well with that. And I hope to see maybe some of you in the fall or spring if you're not graduating. It's a much more pleasurable experience, but this is what it is. And, have a good one. I hope you all stay safe over the summer, and I look forward to seeing what you have to write. Okay, bye-bye.